Hi, this is Dan Reimold with College Media Matters. I'm joined today by Molly Dutmers, currently the online managing editor for the Old Gold and Black, the student newspaper at Wake Forest University, and she's going to soon be transitioning to the editor-in-chief position at the paper, taking over that role during spring semester. She recently wrote a piece that has been blowing up online and causing pockets of both praise and controversy. Just to read you the lead paragraph from this to give you a sense of what's happening. Trapped in a basement, stuck living in a pen created for animals with a dozen other grown men, forced to eat inedible food only from a trough, ordered to sit in other people's vomit. This sounds like a scene out of a horror movie, but it is actually a scene from a fraternity ritual at Wake Forest University. So Molly, first, thank you for taking a few minutes here. And I guess, just to start with quite an enticing lead for this story that ran earlier this month here in December. What's going on first with what you gathered in terms of information for this piece, and then bring us through the narrative of how this has ended up as a controversial story on campus and online.
Okay, well, this is actually, I've been working on this story for a final for my advanced reporting class for a few months now, and we actually wanted to run it next semester, but then a fraternity actually got suspended for allegations of hazing, so we kind of brought that in as the news hook and decided to run it early, so I was writing it right in the office on Wednesday night before we went to print. And it's kind of just, I wanted it to be a look on hazing on campus in general, but kind of when that fraternity got suspended, we had to change it around a little bit. But I think it worked out for the most part. When we actually published it, we started getting both positive and negative feedback that I don't think anyone on staff really expected it to be such a big story for us.
How much is the hazing culture known on campus? Is this one of those things that is kind of out there but not talked about? And so it's kudos to you guys for raising awareness. Is it something that no one has really known about until you have broken this story? How does it kind of work there? Because I know it's obviously different on different campuses with this stuff.
I think it's definitely something that everyone knows about, but it's just not discussed that frequently. I don't think there's anything in the story that would have shocked the student on campus at all, which is that's why we're surprised by some of the feedback that we've gotten.
What is the sort of 30-second rundown? Like what is it that you found through your reporting that was taking place, hazing wise in the various organizations on campus?
Well, the story came up when we got hold of a report or agenda for a meeting for Interfraternity Council, and one of the big things that they were talking about was the increase of hazing reports on campus. So they're actually way up in the past couple semesters. So I talked with Steve Hurst, who is the advisor to Interfraternity Council at Wake Forest and the head of student organizations for a really long time, and he kind of talked me through how hazing is dealt with and what are the most common forms of hazing that are reported, which seems to be sleep deprivation, just intimidation, general servitude, and then forced alcohol consumption. And every student I talked to agreed that that's kind of definitely happens, especially when you're pledging a fraternity.
So this goes live, or at least online, I see here on December 5th. So, last week, it since has obviously blown up, so to speak, at least I'm guessing, especially relative to other OGB pieces. Like, what has been the controversy? What has gone down since it was posted?
Well, immediately after it was posted, I was getting food, and I kind of realized, right, I was standing in line watching everyone, and a lot of people were picking up the paper. And then it had just been placed on the stands. And then Hillary Burns calls me. She's the editor-in-chief right now. She calls me, the Kappa Sigs are stealing all the newspapers from Starbucks, which we put about 250 in Starbucks, and another 100 in the library. And those were all gone, and we actually had an eyewitness see them, so I went, and that was kind of when it started. We went and filed a police report about, because a lot of them were being picked up around campus. And I think kind of from then on, like, a lot of people were just, And then after that happened, we looked and there were comments on the website, like a crazy amount. And eventually we got our newspapers back, but I think just kind of having that, and we put it on Facebook, so a lot of people were like, what's going on? What's happening? We put it on Facebook that the newspapers were being stolen. So I think a lot of people were picking up the OGB. We had people coming and knocking on our offices because we stopped distribution. Hey, I really want a paper. Can you give me one? So kind of after that, and then we held off distribution for another day just so that nothing would happen to it, but everyone was going online. Like, I looked on Google Analytics and we got like 4 times the numbers of traffic that we normally get that day. Since then, it's kind of just been, we submitted the story to Huffington Post and they ran it on the front page of their college section. And the Winston-Salem Journal did a similar front page story yesterday, just more about the fraternity that got suspended. And the local news channel did the same thing.
And so, okay, so both positive and negative, I'm hearing in terms of feedback, and obviously the spin out from when it was first posted. It sounds like you can't ask for anything more. Now, you guys did eventually write some sort of editorial response to some of the comments coming in, or at least the nature of them? Like, what has gone down on the negative side of this? Like, why are they stealing papers, and what would have been the negative comments about the piece at this point?
Some of the negative comments have come out as, this is completely false. Like, how do you find yourself as a newspaper if you're reporting such fallacies and stuff like that, which we have recordings and documents from our sources, so we know that's not true. There's just a lot of personal attacks on me and other staff members on the website. So many angry emails on Friday morning. And mostly the administration has been really positive. They've backed our story 100%. And so it's definitely been, a lot of the negative feedback came early on, but now it's kind of mostly been positive. I've had people coming up to me both on campus saying, I hated your article, or I really liked your article, good for you and the OGB for talking about something that's not talked about that frequently on campus. So it's definitely been, we've had both sides.
Hazing is obviously a subject that doesn't tend to get discussed publicly, especially, I imagine, with the organizations that are more or less, or possibly without even knowing, engaging in it. How do you approach a story like this? Like, what did you find were especially tougher challenges than maybe a typical report that you've dived into in the past?
Definitely talking to anyone who was part of a fraternity. Like, I would ask people I know, and they were like, "Oh, can I interview?" Obviously, you don't have to give your name in the article, and they were like, "No." I'm like, even if I don't give your name, absolutely not. So getting sources was difficult. Kind of, some administrators really didn't want to talk, but eventually they warmed up, and it was kind of half of them were like, "Oh no, I was working on the story over Thanksgiving break, so that was just a general hard to get people to sit down and talk to you then." But for the most part, the reporting process, besides getting anyone in Greek life to talk to me, wasn't as difficult as I imagined it was going to be when I started the story.
You did decide, from what I read online, the actual story and some of the comments on it, the staff editorial response, you did ultimately decide to grant anonymity to at least some of the sources that were willing to talk and obviously talk about various aspects of the hazing or hazing culture. What, just in respect to maybe other student reporters or editors who might be intrigued about the possibility of taking on either a similar report or simply have maybe faced this type of controversy in the past, what did ultimately spur your decision to decide to allow anonymity for the sources, and any challenges with that in particular?
Not really. The editors and I were all on the same page with that. Obviously, a couple people just didn't want to. The 2 girls who I quoted and who were in sororities didn't want to be either ostracized by their sorority for being quoted in the article. A lot of people didn't want, and stuff like that. Some people, one girl said, "I really don't want if you Google Wake Forest and hazing, I really don't want my name to be associated with that. And she also had other reasons. Obviously, the fraternity member quoted in the story could have faced, that's a possible crime, and he could have faced possible criminal charges for admitting to being in any part of hazing was a concern of his. So I think we definitely agreed it was a story that needed anonymous sources to get anyone to talk.
Is it fairly rare for the paper to run stories with anonymous sources, or is it something that you guys do grant, to enable you to get out a tougher story?
It's something that we do grant to get out a tougher story, but it's not something that we do frequently. It has to be a pretty sensitive topic for us to grant, to allow anonymous sources in the story.
And so one of the difficulties, I know we had discussed back and forth briefly by email prior to us chatting here, was simply the idea of what to even do with some of the harsher or more vulgar or personally attacking comments that you're seeing on various parts of, the reporting or editorializing here on the, everything with the hazing, including a whole bunch of comments under your story once it went up on the 5th. What has been the challenge there? What's been the process? Like, what have you guys actually done since some of these more nasty and frankly, literally, vulgar comments have gone up at various times underneath the stories?
Really, when the story came out on Thursday night, most of the staff was sitting in front of their computers pressing refresh just to look at what the comments were coming up and saying. Our policy is anything for comments. We wouldn't put anything that we wouldn't print in our newspaper. We wouldn't allow that in the comments section. So no vulgarity, personal attacks on a single person that are totally unwarranted. No, you can't comment pretending to be someone else. Unfortunately, right now our comments aren't linked to Facebook or anything, so that's something that happens a lot. And we started we were reading through all the comments, taking them down as per our web policy before it was 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was still doing that. And then I just called, and everyone who was still up on staff at that point agreed that it was time to turn comments off because it was getting ridiculous. Right when we posted that editorial, 30 seconds later, there were 10 comments that were frankly disgusting, that were on there. So we just really couldn't keep up with everything that was going on. Mm-hmm. So we shut comments down on what articles were kind of being attacked at that point. And it wasn't, I think, just because so many people were on the website at that point, other articles started getting comments too that were kind of unwarranted or just kind of ridiculous. So there was a lot of comments not only on the hazing article that night.
One of the thing that interests me often is just the sort of ethical entanglements or decisions. So including something like that, the other that seems in play here is that by all accounts, if I'm reading everything correctly, it didn't seem like anyone from Kappa Sig, the fraternity that's named specifically in your piece, and as you mentioned up front, kind of sped up the idea of reporting on this. No one wanted to talk, or at least until after the piece had come out. I wanted to check first: is that true? And then how did that end up impacting your reporting, or how were you able to feel comfortable, going around that, by not having a representative at least on the record or, by name from the fraternity to talk to you?
Yeah, that was something that I was concerned about. I tried to talk to several members, so I didn't feel like it was anything. I tried to get the president to comment on behalf of his organization. They have a few other issues going on now that kind of makes right now their sophomore class is kind of running the fraternity, which is rare. So I think that definitely contributed to it. We tried pretty much all day Wednesday. That was what I was doing, was trying to get in touch with anyone from that fraternity to comment. And eventually the only person who, I had a couple people respond and say that they directed me to their president, who eventually declined to comment. So we felt that we could run the story without any direct quotes from them because we had the reporting, we had confirmations that everything that Steve Hurst told me was true from other people on the Student Life Committee. So it was something that we felt comfortable doing. Obviously, it was something that we wish they would have spoken to us before they saw the article. But I think that was something that they said that that was something I wonder if they regret at all. I think it definitely they would have been happier with how the piece came out if they decided to give their voice, which was something that I told them that I wanted in the story.
Well, it's always the thing that cracks me up because it's, I mean, to me, as an outsider, it's fairly obvious that they do regret it because immediately they had a representative, it seems like, reaching out, kicking and screaming, hold on, we want to talk now. And so it's, I mean, in hindsight, it's always easier to see, but I mean, getting your word out helps control the message a little bit. And that was the last part specifically tied to your reporting here that I admit I was curious to ask you about. You had, and forgive me if I'm remembering correctly, if it wasn't the president, another representative from Kappa Sig who suddenly wanted to talk to you or Hillary or the paper in general. You guys worked that into the editor's note, or kind of the staff editorial after the fact. Was there ever an inclination on your end, just kind of a momentary desire to, I don't know, add an editor's note to your original piece, knowing that that's the one that people are still going to most often, or adding an updated version of it with their commentary, or doing a full follow-up? Like, I was just kind of curious what went through your mind when suddenly someone from Kappa Sig reaches out and says, no, here's at least our side of the story, or something we want you guys to know, once this piece has dropped.
That was the person who was quoted in the editor's note was the same person who did decline to comment for the original article, and I think he called us. Well, someone on staff knew him, so they were talking back and forth about getting the newspapers back to us, and then he said, "Can I meet with you guys to discuss this?" And so they met and discussed it, and he said that he did verify most of the. He verified everything in the story, but then he decided that now it was time to have his view included.
Yeah.
And so I think that we thought, because a lot of people were reading the editor's note and the original story are they're the most popular pieces on our site right now. So I think that we thought that having the editor's note was sufficient. Having the editorial with their view. And we posted that. That's posted more as an editor's note than an editorial. We posted it in the news section of our website. So they're right next to each other.
And just to be clear, what was just for people who might be curious, what was the thinking there versus, I often see these in the opinion section, there's controversy and then the editors want to have their say and reach out. What was the thinking by putting it in the news section?
We wanted them to be near each other on the website, and because it did have Lee's, the president's quote in it, we wanted it to be in news. So I think that was something we just really wanted that people to read both of them.
So bottom line is you kind of look back on this. This is obviously something you put a ton of work into, and always kind of fascinating when something will blow up like this. Not sure if you expected it, or at least expected it to this degree or not. What advice might you offer a future student or student news team who might want to look into something similar to the hazing culture on their campus, or just into maybe the shadows or underbelly of Greek life at their college or university? Anything you might offer as just kind of a basic tip or snippet of a suggestion or two that might help them along the way from what you learned?
I think that even though it might receive some backlash, that if it opens up a dialogue on campus, like I think that this piece has done, obviously it's something that needs to be talked about. So I would say definitely go for it, but make sure that you have everything correct, and because a lot of people are going to be reading it, and to kind of prepare yourself for it to kind of reach a large crowd, encourage maybe some angry comments, and get some negative feedback, because I think that was something that I mean, I knew that it was going to be a big piece. I just didn't know it was going to be something that was, I didn't know that this was going to happen. So I think kind of preparing yourself for it to be something that's discussed on campus and to kind of be under some scrutiny for it.
Do you take the personal attacks, as you mentioned, some of them, it sounds kind of quite nasty, both in the comments and maybe in the emails, and it sounds like maybe even once or twice in person. Do you take that personally? Is it hard to shake that? Have you had a few low moments here, or has it been a steely resolve pushing you through, or even a backward pride in it all? I'm curious kind of how you've personally dealt with this, beyond the professional part of it all.
The personal attacks, I guess I just kind of found them to be ridiculous. People were acting like I was responsible for this organization getting their charter suspended for 5 years, or that this article caused them that, was kind of how people were acting. So I guess I've kind of had the mentality that it was just something that I didn't need to take too seriously. Obviously, it's always upsetting to hear people saying bad things about you, but it was something that I didn't take that seriously because I think that there's just honestly a lack of understanding of what journalism is in a lot of campuses. So I think a lot of people really didn't understand that this wasn't coming from me. This was coming from someone else, and I was just reporting it. So I think that definitely was helpful, but it wasn't something that I took to heart too much.
Where, and kind of to maybe build off that, to bring it out wider scale for a moment, where did your understanding of journalism first form, or where did you first fall in love with, with the idea of reporting and writing?
I was editor of my paper in high school, and kind of when I started doing that, I realized that it was something that I really had the skill set for and enjoyed doing. And since then, I came to college and I knew I wanted to be on the OGB, and so it's kind of just stemmed from there and grown as I've taken journalism classes and written more and become more involved in editorial decision making.
What's been the toughest part being online managing editor? I'm curious, kind of dealing with the online side of things. What's sort of the challenge of that job, and maybe something to think back on as you're wrapping it up now?
The biggest challenge has actually been our website crashed a week before ACPs, and didn't come back online. It was quite the process getting that back online, and that has been the biggest, I guess, event challenge that I've had to deal with. Besides that, it's just getting content online quickly and kind of updating breaking news is something that I've really wanted to focus on, as well as just increasing our presence online. We redid our website 2 years ago, and since then it's really become more popular and we're getting more and more readers online. So that's just kind of been my focus of being an online manager.
What was the secret to that success? What was it about the redesigned site that's been able to grab more readers in the last 2 years?
It's just I barely remember what our website looked like. Because I don't think anyone went to it.
Which is sort of the answer in and of itself in a way, isn't it? Okay. So just the sheer presence of it or the look of it, yeah.
Right. I think it's become relevant. I think people on campus go to it. Alumni, people associated with the university go on the website a lot. We have more online exclusive content. It's really just grown over the past couple of years, and we're working on kind of integrating multimedia more, which has definitely been helpful in getting people to come visit our website.
What did you learn, by the way, from the crash in late October? From the website going down for that extended period. Anything you would offer as advice for, for a student team that either has dealt with that, or in case they were to deal with that in the near future?
Science major on staff in some capacity would have been extremely helpful.
Okay.
I run our website, but I consider myself to be very tech savvy, but when it comes to going into the hosting side, I am pretty much lost, besides my intro to computer science class that I took freshman year. But that would have been really helpful. And to make sure that when you do staff transitions, to make sure that all information gets passed down to you, because one of the biggest problems was it took me 2 days to find out where our website was hosted. So just making sure that you document everything very well definitely would have sped up the process.
I like that. So just kind of having the blueprint or guide, even in a Google Doc somewhere would have maybe made things easier. That's interesting. That's a good piece of advice. So maybe second to last question with everything, as you are now segueing to leadership of the paper, and kind of ironically now suddenly finding yourself A-list on campus, what's sort of what's a goal or two that you have in mind for the paper, kind of taking over and building on everything Hillary and you and the rest of the team has done so far in recent semesters? Anything you have in mind in particular that you're excited to roll out or see if you can implement?
Kind of just increasing, and I feel like in the past maybe 4 semesters, the OGB has really grown and become something that's really relevant on campus and really exciting to be a part of, and it's exciting to see people go out and read the paper, and people or get excited to pick it up on stands on Thursday. So just kind of reporting what students want to read. We've had a lot of positive feedback about keeping things interesting this semester, so that's definitely something that I want to continue putting our readers first and making sure that we're creating content that they're excited to read. And also a goal of mine is to really integrate the website more and expand multimedia options on the website. Definitely like to have more slideshows and videos going up. That's kind of something that I've been working on, and I'm working with a web designer to kind of make that more possible.
And then something I always like to ask in general, just because I get the question a lot from either prospective journalism students or their parents often, the idea of, well, do students nowadays even want to work in journalism, or do they think there will be jobs in it? And so I'm curious, what do you see for yourself potentially after graduation? Do you think you'll find yourself in journalism, or do you already know a direction you want to take, either in that direction or somewhere else?
I definitely would like to find myself in journalism, so I hope there are jobs. That's something I've kind of known that's what I've always wanted to do. So that's definitely my plan after graduation, is to find pretty much anywhere that I could work in that field. I'm sure I'd be happy with.
And certainly proof positive by everything that's gone on the last few days of, as you said, the power of opening up the dialogue on campus and just kind of quality reporting. I hope, do you know yet, have you gotten an A for this report for the class that you were working on it for?
I don't know yet.
That would be the worst personal attack to get in an email. I'm sure you're going to do just fine. So, well, thank you for your time, though. I appreciate it a lot.
All right. Thank you so much.